Okay. How many people like oysters?
I like them.
Anybody? Anybody? We got three that like oysters. Can anybody shuck their own oyster?
No.
No.
Nobody can shuck an oyster?
Nope.
Nobody? You sure?
Nope.
Nobody? Okay. Well, everybody knows that I work at Richard's Fish and Crabs, and I love oysters, and I love to shuck them, and I'm very good. I've actually been asked on several occasions to shuck for people's parties. Somebody asked me on Thanksgiving if I would come to Thanksgiving dinner and shuck their oysters. I love them. They are low fat, low calorie, high in protein, iron, omega-3s. They're delicious if you get over the fact that they look like a booger. They are really good. They're delicious, nutritious. You just got to learn how to shuck them. A lot of people obviously don't know how to shuck them, so I'm going to show you. First, we have a couple different kinds of oysters. I have a local oyster here, low in salt, small size shell. I have a Prince Edward Island from Canada. These are horrible shells. They're very tough to shuck. They fall apart. And then we have here our white stones. They're very little. They're probably the most different kind of oyster. They have a creamy taste and they're very little. So first, we choose your oyster. So we're going to start with a local. They're the easiest to shuck. Then you can choose your knife. There are different kinds, different handles, whatever fits your hand. It really doesn't make a difference. I prefer the flatter one, but we're going to go with this one for this. Make sure you wrap your hand in a towel and or get an oven mitt, or they make special chain mail gloves so you do not stick the knife through your hand. It's very easy to do, especially those people who do not have the knife and use a flathead screwdriver. It goes right through and slides right down. So there is a hinge here. You never go in from this side. It is very easy to just slide right in and it goes right into your hand. There is a hinge. You go into the hinge and you turn counterclockwise and pop. And it slides open. Then you stick your knife in and slide it horizontal down the oyster and pop the top of the shell off. And there you go. And then you jiggle this right around in here and you detach the oyster from the bottom of the shell, like so, and then you have a nice fresh oyster. Some people, especially with locals, they are not salty. You can top with, let's see, we have cocktail sauce people top with, and people like lemons as well. So then we're going to go on to the next oyster, which is very hard for myself to shuck. Is the Prince Edward Island. Is a very brittle shell. It most likely will break halfway through if I can even get it. So again, in at the hinge, make sure your hand is covered, and pop. A lot easier. Slide the knife horizontally down, and for once they did not break. And again, jiggle the knife around in there. Then you have a nice clean, very salty oyster. And then last, we will do the little ones. These tend to break as well. I'm very lucky with the Prince Edward Island that it did not break. So wrap your hand in a towel. Again, go in at the hinge. Turn counterclockwise or clockwise. Like I said, this one tends to break. There we go. Slide it down. These are the plumpest oysters. This gentleman floats his tanks instead of finding them at the bottom. The locals are wild. These are both PEI and the white stones are farm raised. So nice plump oyster. And there you go.
Any questions? Can we ask questions?
You can ask questions.
Why is one salty and the others aren't?
Depends where you get them from and what kind of water they come out of. Whether they're Chesapeake Bay oysters like these, they are the blandest.
Okay.
Because they come out of our fresh water, and then we have farm raised in the salt water themselves, and wherever they come from. We have Rhode Island oysters. We have white stones that come from, I believe, somewhere in New England, Massachusetts, if I'm not mistaken. You're lovely, Massachusetts. Yes. And then we have salt ponds that are huge, and they come from Rhode Island, and it tastes like you swallowed the sea.
Ooh, okay.
Do you have all those at Richard's?
We do. I do. I prefer the locals because I like cocktail sauce and lemon juice on mine. PEIs and the salt ponds that we do carry are entirely too salty for my taste. I like the more bland oyster. The Whitestones, as weird as it is, they have a more creamy taste.
Which one smells the best?
Smells the best?
Sells, S-E-L-L.
Sells? All of them.
Yeah.
Whatever people want. If you want to pay $17 a dozen. For the salt ponds, locals are 10 a dozen. They're hand harvested by a gentleman in Middle River. He goes down and dives for them himself. The PEIs we've been getting in for a long time. Canada oyster. The Whitestones are new, and he floats his tanks, not lowers them. So they don't sink into the bottom completely. They float, and this creates a more plump oyster, according to Richard.
Oh.
So it fills the entire shell. Like the PEI, the oyster is not filling the entire shell. These little oysters, the entire shell is filled.
Oh, okay.
So
Is there one oyster that's better for making like oyster stew?
locals. Anytime you cook with an oyster, it loses its salinity. So if you spend $17 on a dozen of oysters and you cook them, you're losing all the salt. So there's really no point in paying $17 for a dozen of oysters. That you're just going to lose all the.
So you would use
Salt.
the cheaper one?
So you use the cheaper ones.
Okay.
You gotta pan her in one more time. You gotta pan her in one more time.
Okay, Panner.